You're staring at a spreadsheet worth $50 million. The problem is that the money doesn't exist, and in exactly 10 minutes, the cartel is coming to ask where it went. Your hands aren't shaking. You stopped shaking 3 years ago. That's the part that scares you most. Not the danger, not the men walking up the stairs right now with guns under their jackets. What scares you is how calm you've become. How normal this feels. You close the laptop slowly, straighten your collar in the reflection of the dark monitor screen, and remind yourself of one thing. You were never supposed to be here. You were supposed to buy your mother a house. You grew up in a 2-room apartment on the east side of Detroit, where the walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors argue, and the ceiling leaked when it rained hard. Your mother worked double shifts at a packaging plant 6 days a week, and every Friday she would come home smelling like industrial plastic and still managing to smile at you. She never complained. You made a promise to yourself when you were 12 years old, sitting on the cracked plastic chair, watching her count money at the kitchen table, organizing her bills into small, careful piles. You promised that one day she would never count money like that again. One day she would have a house with a garden and a gate and a kitchen big enough to move around in. You made that promise, and you kept it at the center of everything. Numbers became your way out. While other boys in the neighborhood chased shortcuts, you chased grades. You worked through high school with a kind of ferocity that frightened your teachers. You won a partial scholarship to study accounting at Michigan State, and you spent 4 years surviving on the scholarship money and whatever your mother could spare. You graduated with honors. You got a job at Meridian Financial Group in Chicago 2 months after graduation, entry-level, audit department, barely enough to pay rent, but it was legitimate. It was honest. You believed with the whole of your heart that numbers were honest, that numbers couldn't lie, that numbers were the one thing in the world that would always tell the truth if you looked at them long enough. You were 24 years old, and you had never been more wrong about anything in your life. The audit came to you the way all your work came to you, quietly, through an email attachment. Meridian had acquired a small logistics company called Vanguard Freight Solutions 6 months earlier. Standard post-acquisition audit, nothing unusual. You were assigned the job because you were thorough and fast, and your supervisor, Mr. Ellis, liked that you never asked unnecessary questions. You opened the files on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday evening, something is wrong. The revenues don't match the invoices, not in a sloppy, accidental way, in a precise, deliberate way. Vanguard is recording income from clients that have no verifiable addresses, no business history, no digital footprint. You run the tax registration numbers. 3 of the top 5 clients don't exist. You sit back from your screen and think, clerical error, data migration problem. You flag it internally and go home. Wednesday morning, you go deeper. You pull the transaction histories going back 4 years. The money comes in clean, but it doesn't come in alone. It arrives in overlapping waves, always just under the threshold that triggers IRS reporting requirements. Someone designed this deliberately. Someone who understood compliance regulations well enough to dance around every single one of them. Your throat feels dry. You get up, drink water from the office cooler, look out the window at the Chicago skyline. You tell yourself it's fraud, corporate fraud. Not unusual, not your problem. Flag it, document it, escalate it, walk away.
You draft the report. You're ready to send it. Then you find the secondary account. It's hidden inside a subsidiary of a subsidiary, a dormant company called Obelisk Holdings, registered in Delaware. You only find it because a single transaction number repeats across 2 separate ledgers in a way that shouldn't be possible unless someone made a mistake. Someone made one small mistake in a construction that is otherwise flawless. and the amount sitting inside Obelisk Holdings, moving quietly through 6 relay accounts into a New York bank and then disappearing into real estate, is not hundreds of thousands. It is not millions. It is $260 million over 4 years. You close the file. You open it again. The number is still there. You understand in this moment that you are looking at something that people kill to protect. You don't send the report. You don't say a word. You go home, sit in the dark of your small apartment, and think. By Thursday morning, you've convinced yourself to do the smart thing. Erase your search history, tell Mr. Ellis the audit found minor reconciliation issues now corrected, close the file, move on. Survive. Your mother needs you alive more than she needs you righteous. But Thursday afternoon, a man comes to your office. He doesn't knock. He walks in, closes the door behind him, sits in the chair across from your desk like he owns it. He is somewhere in his 40s, clean-cut, perfectly dressed, with the kind of stillness that belongs to people who have never been afraid of anything in their lives. He introduces himself only as Mr. Dante. He says he represents the ownership of Vanguard Freight Solutions. He says he knows you've been looking at certain accounts. He says this without aggression, without any visible emotion at all, the way a doctor reads a chart. Then he tells you that you have a choice. You can forget what you found, continue your career, and receive a bonus transfer that will allow you to, in his exact words, make that purchase your mother has been waiting for. You don't know how he knows about your mother. You don't ask. The second option, he says, is more complicated, and he lets the sentence die there without finishing it. You sit in silence for a long time. The second option hangs in the air like smoke. "I need time," you hear yourself say. Mr. Dante nods once, stands up, adjusts his jacket. "He have until Sunday," he says. He leaves. You realize you never shook his hand. You realize 10 seconds after the door closes that your hands are shaking for the first time in years. You don't sleep Friday. You spend the night building a plan to run, to take the evidence, go to the FBI, blow the whole thing open, and trust that the legal system will protect you. By 4 a.m., you've talked yourself out of it. By dawn, you've talked yourself back in. By Saturday afternoon, you're on the third loop of the same circular terror, going nowhere. Saturday evening, your phone rings. It's your mother. She tells you she's not feeling well. Nothing serious, she says, just tired. But she sounds small on the phone, smaller than you remember. She asks if you're okay. You tell her yes. She tells you she's proud of you. She says she tells all her neighbors about her son, the accountant in Chicago. You hold the phone after she hangs up, and the choice you've been circling for 3 days finally becomes very simple. Sunday morning, you call the number Mr. Dante left. You tell him you accept the first option. That is the last peaceful decision you ever make.
The bonus comes. It's exactly enough to buy the house in a quiet suburb of Cincinnati that your mother has been admiring for 2 years. You transfer the money, make the purchase, tell your mother it's an investment property. She cries on the phone. You stand in the bathroom of your apartment and cry too, but not for the same reason. Then Mr. Dante calls again. He has a small request, he says. The audit report you filed identified some irregularities that need to be corrected before external review. He needs you to adjust 3 figures, small adjustments, clean up the language, just this once. You do it. 3 weeks later, he calls again. Another request. This time, it's more technical, restructuring some of the flow through Obelisk to survive a potential IRS sweep. You do that, too. Then another call, another request, another reason why just this once isn't finished yet. By the time you understand that you are no longer an accountant who knows a secret, but a criminal who works for a cartel, it has been 4 months. And the men who run the cartel know your name, your mother's address, your college transcript, and the exact dimensions of the life you've built. You are not trapped by threats alone. You are trapped by the thing you did to your own soul, quietly, in small increments, without ever saying yes to any single thing that felt like the point of no return. That is how they do it. They never show you the cage until you're already inside. His name is Marcus. You meet him at your first real in-person meeting in a warehouse in the south side of Chicago. You brought there blindfolded in the back of an SUV, still wearing your work shirt and tie because no one told you to dress otherwise. Marcus finds this enormously funny. He's sitting on a stack of crates eating a burger from a takeaway bag, wearing a battered Lakers jersey, gold chain, and the easy grin of someone who's never once in his life pretended to be something he isn't. "They sent the accountant in his tie," he says, laughing to himself. "Brother, who told you this was a board meeting?" He is Vanguard's logistics coordinator, meaning he knows where every shipment goes, what it contains, and who must be paid to not look closely at it. He grew up in Compton, started hustling at 14, got recruited into this life at 21, and has never quite left, even though he's threatened to every year. He has a younger sister in college, studying nursing. He sends her tuition money every semester. He never talks about it proudly, but you see him transfer it once, using your laptop, and the care he takes typing her name makes your chest tighten. Marcus decides immediately that you are his project. He starts calling you Cole, your surname, like he's known you a decade. He teaches you the language of the organization, who defers to whom, which rules are unbreakable and which are just tradition, which of Mr. Dante's lieutenants can be reasoned with and which cannot. He does it not because he was told to, but because he sees that you are drowning, and because, in his own way, he cannot stop himself from helping people who look like they need it. You meet Stone 2 weeks later. Stone is the opposite of Marcus in nearly every way. He is quiet, almost preternaturally so, with a stillness about him that the others attribute to his background. 7 years in the Army Rangers, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and something that happened in Kandahar that he will never speak about directly, but that surfaces sometimes in the way he holds himself still in crowded rooms, always with his back to the wall, always watching the door. He is the organization's security, their problem solver for situations that cannot be solved with money. But he is not violent in the way you expect. He's methodical. He thinks before he acts. He reads actual physical books constantly, and he will recommend you a novel with the same flat affect he uses for everything else, as if literature and danger occupy the same temperature in his mind. Stone warms to you slowly over weeks, until one evening in a safe house in Milwaukee, when there's nothing to do but wait, and you spend 4 hours playing chess and not talking, and at the end of it he says unprompted, "You're a decent man. I'm sorry you're here." You don't know what to do with that. You don't forget it either. Then there is Reed. Reed is 22 and terrified of everything except technology. He is the organization's digital security, transactions, communications, identity management, everything that runs through a screen, and he approaches his work with a paranoia so complete that it has become its own kind of art. He doesn't use a phone with the original battery. He changes his primary laptop every 90 days. He runs 3 separate digital identities and switches between them so fluidly that sometimes he seems unsure himself which one is real. He should be insufferable. Instead, he is somehow one of the funniest people you have ever met, in the specific way of someone who has turned anxiety into performance. He does impressions of Mr. Dante that are so accurate and so dangerous that the 3 of you only ever let him do them in absolute private, crying with laughter, terrified someone might walk in. These 3 men become your world, not because you chose them, because proximity and danger and the specific loneliness of living inside a secret created something that felt, against all logic, like family. The years move like a current, fast in memory, slow when you're inside them. You become important to the organization not through violence or ambition, but through sheer competence. You redesign their financial architecture from scratch, layering shell companies across 7 states, restructuring cash flow so that it arrives clean on paper, building compliance ratios that look pristine on audit. You do this with the same methodical intelligence you once applied to honest work, and the fact that those are the same skills applied to opposite ends is something you try not to think about directly. Mr. Dante gives you a team, then an office, then a car, a driver, an apartment in the Gold Coast neighborhood of Chicago that looks out over Lake Michigan. You send money home every month, more money than your mother has ever seen, always with a clean explanation, always wrapped in a fiction she seems to prefer not to examine too closely. The house in Cincinnati gets furnished. You see your mother's face the first time she walks through the front door, and something in you breaks quietly, the way old wood breaks, just suddenly not holding the weight anymore. You are successful, you are feared, in the specific lateral way that financial power creates fear. People treat you carefully, deferentially, because you understand where the money is and how it moves and what happens when it doesn't. Mr. Dante begins consulting you before major decisions. You are 28 years old, and you run the financial nervous system of an organization that moves more money in a year than most banks in the Midwest. And you feel like a man standing in a beautiful room that has no doors.
The first real loss comes without warning. A mid-level distributor in Houston is suspected of skimming. The evidence Reed finds is thin. A pattern in withdrawal timing, a lifestyle inconsistency, nothing that would stand in a court. But the cartel doesn't use courts. Mr. Dante assigns Stone to investigate. You don't ask questions. 2 weeks later, the man's name stops appearing in any communication. You understand what that means. You file away the knowledge in the place you've built inside yourself for things you cannot afford to feel yet, and you keep working. But that night, Marcus comes to your apartment. He doesn't say anything for a long time. He sits on your balcony looking at the lake. Then he says, "I've been in this life 11 years. I've seen a lot of people disappear. It doesn't get easier to ignore." He pauses. "I'm just telling you so you're not surprised when it starts feeling heavy." "It already feels heavy," you tell him. He nods. "Good," he says. "When it stops feeling heavy is when you need to worry about yourself." The crisis that changes everything begins the way most crises in your experience begin, with a number that doesn't add up. $50 million is missing from a holding structure you designed to be impenetrable. Not stolen from outside. The architecture of the disappearance is too clean, too precise. Someone on the inside, someone who understood the system deeply, moved the money intentionally and covered their tracks with a level of sophistication that narrows your suspect list to approximately 4 people. You are one of them, which means you need to find who did it before Mr. Dante decides the simplest answer is the right one. You work for 72 hours, almost without sleep. Reed works alongside you, paranoid and brilliant, reconstructing transaction flows through deleted logs, finding ghost traces in metadata that the person who did this almost erased completely. On the 3rd night at 3 a.m., Reed goes very quiet for a long time. Then he turns his screen to face you. The trail leads to Marcus. You sit with that knowledge for 6 hours before you tell anyone, and in those 6 hours you understand, finally and completely, the full cost of the life you have been living, because you know Marcus, you know his sister, you know that if he moved that money, he moved it to disappear, to build a new life somewhere quiet, somewhere he could watch his sister graduate without looking over his shoulder. You know that if you tell Mr. Dante, Marcus will not survive the week. You also know that if you don't tell Mr. Dante, you will not survive the week. You go to Stone first. You tell him what you found. He listens to all of it without expression, then sits in silence for a long time. When he speaks, he says, "He told me last month he was thinking about leaving. I told him to be patient." He looks at you. His eyes are very tired. He wasn't patient. "If I bring this to Dante," you start.
Don't, Stone says quietly. Don't finish that sentence. We both know what happens. Then what do we do? Stone is quiet for a long time. Give him a head start, he says finally. Tell Dante the trail is cold. Buy him time to move. This is not a plan. This is a prayer dressed up as a plan. You both know it. You go to Dante with a partial report, a sophisticated external breach, no internal fingerprints, the money likely gone through a channel you are still reconstructing. Dante is furious. He assigns Reed to continue the investigation under your supervision. You tell Reed privately, quietly, what the stakes are. Reed stares at you for a long moment, then nods once, and you watch him spend the next 3 days brilliantly, painstakingly, constructing a false trail that leads nowhere. 4 days later, Marcus is gone. His phone is off. His apartment on the south side is empty. His sister, Reed confirms, has been seen at a small college town in Oregon, registering for a nursing program under a new name. He made it. You tell yourself that over and over for a week. He made it. He got out. Then the cartel finds him. You don't know how. You will never know how. Reed's false trail was perfect, but the cartel has resources and reach that exist outside of digital architecture, in the human world of informants and favors and old loyalties that no algorithm can fully map. Stone tells you on a Thursday evening, standing in a parking garage in the Loop, his voice flat and careful. They found him. He's gone. You don't speak. You stand in the dim garage light and feel the shape of the thing that was taken. Not just Marcus, but the version of yourself that had wanted to believe it was possible to protect someone. The version that believed a head start was enough. Stone puts a hand on your shoulder once, briefly, then he leaves. You stand there for a long time. The revelation comes from the most ordinary place, a deathbed. Your mother calls you in December to tell you that an old man in the family, an old uncle you barely remember, is dying and asking for you specifically. You go to Detroit reluctantly, already feeling the weight of the cartel's watch on your movements, already performing the mental calculus of absence and visibility. You sit by the old man's bed in a house that smells like camphor and old wood, and he takes your hand with surprising strength for a man so thin. He tells you that your father, who you were told died when you were 3, whose absence you had simply accepted as one of the fixed facts of your childhood, like poverty, like the leaking ceiling, did not die. He disappeared. He was an accountant. He worked for a company in Chicago in the late 90s that he didn't fully understand until it was too late. He ran. He ran when you were still small enough that running seemed like mercy, like sparing you. The old man doesn't know if he is still alive. He doesn't know where he went. He just wanted you to know you weren't the first. You drive back to Chicago in silence. The car moves through the night on I-94, and the understanding settles over you like weather, slow, total, changing everything it touches. Your father was where you are now. Your father looked at the same cage from the inside, and he chose to run, to disappear, to become an absence in your life rather than let the thing he'd gotten into become the shape of yours. And you followed the same path anyway, without knowing, without anyone warning you, as if it were something in the blood, something inherited, not a choice, but a current. You think about your mother counting money on the kitchen table in Detroit. You think about the promise you made at 12 old. You think about the house in Cincinnati with the garden and the front porch, brought with money that came from this, from all of this, and you feel the full weight of the irony that the dream you worked to give her, you gave her, and the giving of it may have made her a target for the rest of her life. You make a new decision. The cartel turns on you quickly, the way these things always move, not gradually, but all at once, a door slamming shut. A new man arrives in Mr. Dante's circle, a financial consultant from Miami, brought in quietly. You recognize the meaning immediately. You are being replaced. Being replaced means being redundant. Being redundant in this life has one outcome. Reed confirms it in a message that is simply, "They talked about you tonight." Not kindly. You go to Stone. He is already packing. How long have you known? You ask. 2 weeks, he says. I was hoping I was wrong. You're leaving? We're leaving, he says levelly. Or we're not leaving. Those are the options. Reed has prepared new identities, layered, untraceable, the best work of his obsessive career, built over months in the background while he was still technically working for the organization. He has routed enough of your own money through clean channels that you have access to enough to start again, somewhere, as someone else. The plan is to move separately, Stone first, then Reed, then you. Stone goes on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, there's no word. By Thursday morning, Reed sends you a single message. He made it. He crossed. He's safe. You exhale for the 3rd day in 3 days. Reed leaves Friday. He sends you a voice note from a bus station in El Paso, speaking quietly in the background of the terminal, saying only, "Cole, it's done. The package I left you, use it and don't look back. I'll see you somewhere normal one day, somewhere boring. God, I hope it's boring." You hear him laughing softly. The voice note is 42 seconds long. You will listen to it many more times than you will ever admit. You are the last one. You are supposed to leave Saturday. On Friday night, Mr. Dante comes to your apartment. He doesn't come alone. The next 4 hours are the longest of your life. 2 men stand at the door. Mr. Dante sits across from you in your living room and speaks with that same uninflected calm he has always used, the calm that has nothing behind it. And he tells you that there have been some concerns, that there are questions about where certain assets have been routed, that he hopes you understand this is simply a business matter, that he needs access to your personal accounts by morning. You give him what he asks for, not your real accounts, the ones Reed prepared, the mirror image of the life you're leaving, numbers that will take Dante's people at least 48 hours to fully trace, long enough. Dante leaves. You wait 20 minutes, long enough that the surveillance team he's left in the car outside will have settled into routine. Then you leave through the building's parking structure, through a route Reed mapped 6 months ago during one of his better paranoid episodes, through a service exit that opens onto a side street in the Gold Coast, into a car that does not belong to you, with documents that say you are someone else.
You drive north on I-94. The house your mother lives in is dark when you arrive in Cincinnati, close to midnight. You sit outside for a while, looking at it, the garden she planted along the front walk, the porch light she keeps on overnight. A house that exists because you kept a promise. A house that exists because of everything that came after. You go inside quietly. You sit at her kitchen table, a good table now, solid oak, nothing like the plastic one from the apartment in Detroit, and you write her a letter. You tell her you have to go somewhere for a while. You tell her the house is hers and it's safe, that no name she knows is attached to anything she doesn't understand, that Reed made certain of this, and that you trust him completely. You tell her she will hear from you when it's safe, and that it will be safe. You tell her you're sorry for the shape of the years. You tell her she was right to be proud, not of the money, but of the original thing, the boy at the kitchen table who decided that numbers were honest and that love was worth working for. You tell her her son is still that boy, that somewhere underneath everything he never stopped being that boy. You put the letter on the table. You look at the kitchen for a long moment, the good pots, the curtains she chose herself, the small framed photograph of you at your Michigan State graduation that she put on the shelf like a trophy. Then you walk out of the house, through the front door, back into the dark. The last thing Reed's documents give you is an exit through a crossing into Canada near the Minnesota border, where a contact will ask you a specific question, and you will give a specific answer, and after that, you are no longer you. You are a new name in a new country with a clean account and a second chance at a life made entirely of honest things. You drive through the early hours of Saturday morning on I-90. The roads are empty. The sky begins to lighten somewhere past Madison, Wisconsin, that slow gray warmth that comes before sunrise, and you think about your father on a road like this one, decades ago, making the same calculation, staying or going, love or survival,
what you owe the people you love versus what you owe the person you were before all of this. You think he made the wrong choice. You think disappearing entirely is not mercy, it is just another form of abandonment dressed in a father's guilt. You will not make that choice. You will go where you have to go, and you will build something clean. And one day, not soon, but one day, you will call your mother. You will tell her everything. You will sit in a kitchen together and count nothing. You reach the Minnesota border crossing as the sun finishes rising. The contact looks at you once, asks the question. You give the answer. The barrier lifts. You drive through. Some men enter the darkness by choice. Some are carried in by current, by poverty, by the specific gravity of a dream and the lengths you're willing to go to protect it. What the darkness takes from you, it takes slowly, not all at once, never all at once, always just one small compromise at a time, until you look up one day and the person you were is so far behind you, it takes real effort to remember his face. But you remember him. You remember him every morning when you open your eyes in a quiet country where no one knows your original name. You remember him when you sit at a desk doing honest work with honest numbers for honest people, earning less in a month than you used to spend on dinner, and feeling something in your chest that you haven't felt since before it all began, something that takes you a while to identify because it has been so long. It is peace. It costs you everything you built. It costs you your name, your country, 3 years of your life, a friend you could not save, and the version of yourself that believed the ends could justify the means. But it is real. It is yours. And some mornings, when the light comes through the window of the small apartment you rent in a city your mother has never heard of, you take out a piece of paper and you write numbers. Not cartel numbers, not shadow money or shell companies or false ledgers, just numbers, clean numbers, the kind that tell the truth if you look at them long enough. You were right about that part, it turns out. Numbers are honest. It was always the men holding them who weren't. You drove through a gate with someone else's name and left everything behind, except the promise you made to a boy watching his mother count money at a table. That boy, it turns out, was the only thing worth keeping.